welcome back. I'm Tedward, and today, thanks to Bond Group in Waltham, Massachusetts, I'm very excited to say we are driving a Ferrari F355 Spider. This is one of the most iconic modern Ferraris ever made. Of course, the lines are penned by the one and only Pininfarina, and that's why this looks so quintessentially Ferrari. But this has one of the best sounding engines Ferrari ever created. It's a 3.5-liter, 90-degree flat-plane crank V8 with 5 valves per cylinder, because its predecessor, the 348, had 4 valves per cylinder. They opened this up quite a bit, so now it's making 375 horsepower at 8,200 RPM. It's a high-revving 6-speed monster. Now, this one has a gated manual transmission, of course, sending all the power to the rear wheels. But the F355 was really important because it was the first car to employ the F1 automated manual gearbox with paddle shifters behind the steering wheel, just like they had in Formula One. So that way, the driver could keep their hands on the wheel while shifting. Obviously, those were kind of cumbersome and very expensive to repair, and the manual cars are much more desirable today. So when this came out, we had a Berlinetta, which was the coupe. We had a Targa, the GTS, and we had the Spider as the convertible. The Targa had a removable hardtop, which could be placed behind the rear seats, and this has a automatically retracting top, which is a little cumbersome, and honestly, I just wish that it was manual. I think, obviously, I understand where they're coming from. It's luxury, it's expensive, but it would be nice if that was just a quick one and done. Now, one of the things I love about this car are all the swoops and lines, these louvers, all the vents. It's basically completely open in the rear, aside from these slats, which is wild. There's lots of cooling action happening to keep this mid-engine thing running. But if you check out these doors, look at the scoops for the intakes. This is just massive. It's so cool. And actually, the door handles are under here. So this looks really wild because that goes straight through to there. And look at the size of this door sill. Pretty nuts. Now inside, we've got electronically moving seats. We've got a tilting steering wheel, not telescoping, and of course we have this beautiful gated 6-speed manual transmission, leather cladded all over, and this one has 27,000 miles on it. It's been taken care of because you can tell, look at all this leather is still in great shape. No cracks, no wrinkles. I am very impressed. So let's take a look under the hood, because back here, oh yes, man, I guess those hood struts really work. Here is our 5 valve per cylinder, beautifully sounding V8. We'll get this started soon, but you can see on the valve covers, it even says cinque valvole. So you do see that it's telling you there's 5 valves per cylinder in there. Giant oil filter up here. But now it's time to get down to the crux of the issue with the 355, because at one point these cost somewhere in the range of $60,000, but they're very expensive to maintain, because if you'll notice, all of the accessory belts are up front and there's no room to work there, which means you can't pass through here to get to those accessory belts. So when you need belt service, it is an engine out service, and a lot of other things go down, but typically you're in for $15,000 to $25,000 every time you want to go in for like a regular service, like a regular major service, I guess maybe that's what it's called. But still, it's tough, because if you spent 60 grand on it and then you got to go and spend 20 grand on it a few years later, that's a big number. But today we're going to find out if it's worth it. Let's take a look at the storage up front. I just love the way everything opens in this car. And we have pretty major storage capacity up here. Now, maybe not perfect for giant bags, but you could certainly put some soft bags in there. And we've got our beautiful leather Ferrari luggage with all of my equipment as well. So that's working out for us. Another thing that I love about this car, pop-up headlights. Let's pop these up. And something that I hate about this car are the sounds, the warning sounds. That is gonna haunt my dreams for a very long time. But there you go. Now we've got these bad boys up, and I just think it totally changes the style of the car. Yes, I left the door open, so you have to listen to that beeping too, because, you know, this is the realities of Ferrari ownership. These are the sounds you're gonna have to hear. Love it. I would probably break those if I own them because I would be playing with them all day. So let's jump in. Oh, that is gonna kill me. Take this thing for a ride and see how it operates. To get our little friend started, we've got our immobilizer here. So we'll pop into here, hit this button, good neutral. Jumps right to life. It has a dry sump oiling system, so it should be able to handle some pretty aggressive quartering without losing oil pressure. We like that. We've got an oil pressure gauge right up front, water temp. Down here, we've got a clock, our fuel and our oil temp. Things are coming up nicely. We can move our seat forward or back down there, and our handbrake right here to release, pull up, button, and down. We're good to go. Now there's not a lot of storage inside the car. It's kind of annoying actually, but you've got your cigarette lighter with your Ferrari flags, automatic electronic window mirrors, we like that, and your HVAC controls. Very simple stuff. I love the way this car revs. It's so smooth and it sounds incredible. The steering, man, oh man, this is one slow steering rack. You have to put a lot of input into this thing to get it around a corner. Iconic Italian horn. Please move. The powertrain of this Ferrari is outrageous. It sounds fantastic, it drives so smoothly, and I've heard some pretty incredible aftermarket exhaust that people have put on these things, and they just get like Formula One crazy at the high rev range. It's not laden with torque, but the power climbs with the revs beautifully. To put a lot of input into the steering. It's a light steering rack because it is power assisted. You could actually ask them to put a manual rack in the car. I think it was a dealer installed thing, but you could do that. It is pretty soft, and I think the point of this car, God, these bumps are terrible, but it goes to show that this was like a very usable thing around town, and I think that was one of the issues with the drivability of the 348 that came before it, was that it was a little clunky, a little awkward, and a little hard to get it to drive smoothly, whereas this is definitely soft. Now it does actually have a variable suspension mode. It has a comfort and a sport mode that you can play around with, which will stiffen it up a little bit. I'm kind of fine with where it's at. You can tell it gets a little floaty over a mid-corner bump, but nothing scary. You just have to be very hyper aware that you're driving a mid-engine car. The throttle response is fantastic. It's just that you have to break through that first initial kind of like friction of starting off. Despite having very close gear ratios, especially this like 1 through 3, it's not hard to drive around town. And also, despite having a ridiculously high revving flat plane V8, it has torque. It has enough torque to kind of do things sort of down low. I mean, I guess down low is relative because I'm still at like 3,000 RPM, but it's comfortable to drive. It's not hard to kind of find that sweet spot. I don't feel like I need to keep revving the crap out of it just to get any life. See, I gotta break through that initial friction point on the throttle. That's just like a little frustrating. I'm not gunning it. I'm just trying to get through that, and then everything's really smooth. Now, gated shifters. This is a weird thing to me. I don't mind gated shifters. I don't like idolize them. I think they're fun. I think they make a cool sound. And I think it's nice because you never question what gear you're in, which I believe is the whole point of a gated shifter. But what I feel like a gated shifter is essentially like, I don't know, this is my opinion, they must just be band-aids for sort of vague shifter feel. Because if you didn't have the gate, maybe you would mix up third, fifth, and first or something. So is this just a band-aid on a awkward shifter? I don't know because I haven't pulled it off to try it, and I'm not going to. So, you know, say what you will about, oh, it's a gated shifter, it's great. Well, really, it's just to make sure you don't, you know, accidentally hit the wrong gear. And out here, 70 miles an hour, 3,100 RPM, just cruising. Not a whole lot of wind buffeting and cruising into the cabin with the windows up. That feels really good. I mean, this is just like comfortable. The suspension in this car is actually really supple. It's less race car than I anticipated. It's like you get the beauty of a great touring car, a great sports car with the engine of a supercar. The brakes are firm but positive. Get some little baby burbles off throttle. And everybody wants this car. This is like maybe not the ownership cost, but it's one that you like driving and you just want to stare at all day in your garage or your driveway. It's pollen season, so probably keep it in the garage for a while. I love having a 200 mile per hour speedo and a 10,000 RPM tach. How cool is that? I'm struck by a couple things here. Number one is how soft it feels. It doesn't feel straight up race car. It actually is like a great sports car that seems like it's genuinely tailored for road going drivers. Probably on some rough Italian roads, this thing does really well because you can hit some bumps, you're not gonna get unsettled, it's gonna do its thing. But the heart of this engine is pure racing. It sounds insane, and it looks like a supercar. Nothing, like almost nothing to this day even looks as good as this car. Enzos are wild, whatever, sure, great. But this is one of the best looking Ferraris ever made. It's that perfect sort of soft 90s vibe with the Pininfarina edges and scoops of the 60s. There's something really incredible about this, and maybe it's just because it's the era that I grew up in that I value it so highly in terms of its appearance, but that's where we are. If I were to change a couple things, I'd probably opt for a tighter ratio steering rack, maybe softer. Power steering is fine. It actually makes it very drivable to have a soft power steering system. But let's not get wet from this sprinkler system that this woman seems to be having trouble with. And maybe I'd put like a modern coilover suspension system in it so it could handle the bumps a little more composed, but without being too stiff. So anyway, I'm pretty thrilled to have been able to drive this car. I've wanted to drive one of these for a very long time. It's gorgeous. It sounds incredible. There's a great BMW. We love that. Thank you guys so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Thanks to Bond Group in Waltham, Massachusetts for throwing me the keys to this thing. Don't forget to respect the drive, and I'll see you in the next one. That is going to haunt my dreams for a very long time.